Right there, I hope you can hear me. I just wanted to address the Matthew Macfadyen issue that Kevin Costner, my hero, has brought up. This is a quite funny because this is a reply to a reply I made of a video that I was given a link to of Matthew Macfadyen reading, I think it was Sonnet number 29 by William Shakespeare, and I felt I didn't think it was as read as well as it could be. I know he was trying to read it in a modern way, but I think, you know, a traditional way of reading poems is a lot better. It gives them a lot more depth and a lot more feeling. He does have a good voice. I've never liked his voice 100% though. He does have a certain sound to his voice. I'm not sure if it's a plummy sound. I don't know how to describe the sound in his voice that's not as pleasing as, say, Anthony Hopkins or Richard Burton, who have the best voices in all acting, I believe, in all speaking, and you know, in comparison to those, and even maybe to Laurence Olivier, you know, Matthew Macfadyen doesn't shine. Even I don't shine to the likes of their voices. Anyway, it was sort of a little bit of a jokey video because MJ likes Matthew Macfadyen so much, and that's why I decided to read those. Also, I felt that they could be read better. Also, he didn't, I believe there was one H he didn't pronounce properly. He might be from London, and Londoners tend not to pronounce their H's properly. But, you know, people have seen, I know I've put comments on his version of Pride and Prejudice, because I was given a rain scene and I thought he was a bit wooden in that, which a lot of people like that scene. And obviously I know because anyone who plays the role of Darcy gets to an iconic status because of the very character of Darcy. You know, like Colin Firth did. I preferred Colin Firth's performance. I like Colin Firth as an actor. I have seen the Pride and Prejudice now with Matthew Macfadyen, and I did enjoy it. I must admit I was a bit coloured of his performance by seeing him in Spooks, which was a BBC TV programme that he did first, and in that he was a bit wooden, so that's why my thoughts came from that he was going to be like that. But he's improved a lot since Spooks, and there was always something, and I saw this in that reading of the Sonnet, something with his eyes that I can't really explain, that his eyes always looked a bit druggy-like, you know, and I don't know what they were, glazed. I can't explain it, but in Spooks and in that Sonnet reading, that you can see that in his eyes. Something about it, maybe he was uncomfortable, or maybe I don't know why his eyes look sort of glazed and like that. Whereas in later things that I've seen him in, like Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens, I loved him in that as Arthur Clements. He was very good. I still don't like his voice very much because of the slight sound. I'm not sure what that sound is. I prefer the sort of Anthony Hopkins, Richard Burton sounding in voice, or Kenneth Branagh, who's got a wonderful voice. But he was great as Arthur Clements in Little Dorrit by Charles Dickens. And I recently saw him in Frost Nixon, and he was good in that. And obviously the most recent thing I've seen him as Mr. Darcy in Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, which, you know, I wasn't sure how he's going to be, because obviously I like the 95 version with Colin Firth, but I really liked the film. Even I didn't mind Keira Knightley. I've never really liked her very much either, but I thought they were both good in the part. I can see why people would prefer Matthew's performance, because I think his was a lot more kinder than, say, Colin Firth's performance. You know, I mean, I know because it's a film they have to shorten it, but they certainly try to make it more lovey. I think in the book it's probably closer to Colin Firth's version, where he is a bit more pompous and a bit more gruff first, because you have to have that to make you think, you know, to understand Elizabeth's dislike of him. Because if he's too nice, then you think, well, why would she dislike him? But in the film version, in the first few minutes, you get to see Matthew Macfadyen's portrayal of Darcy as a vulnerable character, where he looks, when he comes into the ball and he sees Elizabeth, and he looks at her, and then it's the minute that she catches his eyes, he looks away. Now, I think that's actually very realistic, and probably the more realistic version of how a man who is uncomfortable with women would react, as opposed to Colin Firth's more, you know, pompous way of doing it. But I think the novel actually is truer to Firth's version as opposed to the more likeable Darcy that Matthew Macfadyen likes. So I'm not surprised that people, if they were given a vote of which they preferred, would prefer Matthew Macfadyen's portrayal, because he's a lot more softer, and you see that vulnerability. And even when they go up to meet him, he swallows, and he can't look them in the eye, and you can see how he's finding it difficult to talk. Whereas in the Firth version, it's not so much. So I haven't listened to Jane Austen's version of Pride and Prejudice, or read the book, I should say. I have an audiobook, that's why I said that. So I can't recall, but I seem to remember reading that, if I remember rightly, that the Firth version is closer, in the sense that they had more time. There's not so many scenes of Darcy in the film version, and as I remember listening to it, Darcy's character was more gruff like that, because I think that is part of the story. You can't have him. The problem with the film is if you have him vulnerable plus a bit sort of disagreeable, because that's where it doesn't make sense in the film, where it does in the TV series. Because you have him, one minute you have him looking at Elizabeth, and he looks at her and then looks away because he sees her eyes. So he's caught her attention, and he likes her, you see from that. And then when he comes up, he can't speak, and he swallows, and he feels very nervous. That's how a man who's vulnerable acts, I know, from experience. And but then minutes later, she overhears him in the film talking to is it Mr. Bingley, isn't it? His friend, about Elizabeth being disagreeable. That's what they've taken from the novel, because it's in the Firth version as well. And that shows the difference. How can one minute he be vulnerable, next minute he be disagreeable? I think they, in the film version, because they had 2 hours to do the filming for a whole book, I think they simplified Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. So I can understand why people like Matthew Macfadyen. Anyway, getting back to the point of the matter that Kevin Costner's my hero brought up. Yeah, so I do acknowledge, that he is a good actor. I do like his performance. I actually liked him in Frost Nixon. I did think he was a bit out of place there when I saw him, because I forgot that he was the man in Spooks. I thought, just a minute, I've seen this guy. And he's a bit out of place here, because they got he played the ITV boss, but he was quite likeable in that, so I liked him in that. And he's a good actor, and he does have that rugged, handsome look. And I must admit, when I was because I was a bit unsure about the film version of Pride and Prejudice before I saw it, but when seeing the clips, I did comment that he does have something in his eyes, which is quite strange, because when I saw him in that Sonnet and in Spooks, I always thought that his eyes were the worst thing about him, because they always appeared glazed. But in the Pride and Prejudice that I saw, he does have like puppy dog eyes, and his eyes are very striking, as opposed to, say, Colin Firth's more harsh eyes. So yeah, I do acknowledge those things. I just found his reading of the Sonnet 29 not to be as good as it could be. But then I suspect I don't know what he was doing that for. Maybe some kind of BBC learning thing. But his it appeared a very modern approach, and personally I prefer the traditional way of reading these things. So I didn't really like it. So if he'd read it like traditionally, how the poems are supposed to be read, with depth. I'm not saying he didn't, but he read it in a very sort of anyway, I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I'm sure that if he read it traditionally, then his voice would suit it a lot better. It's just unfortunate that whenever they want to make read out these poems, they want to try and read them in a modern way, without the inflection of the depth that they really require. Anyway, so I hope that's cleared up. I do like Matthew Macfadyen. I did like the film Pride and Prejudice and Little Dorrit with him in, and Frost Nixon, and I did used to watch Spooks as well. So there you go. I hope that's cleared it up, and I hope you understand that I'm not dishing Matthew Macfadyen. I made comments either way, constructive, and tried to explain them. So there you are. I hope that ends the matter. Anyway, there you go. Thank you very much. Thank you kindly. Take care. Take it easy, and peace.